attacks that are coming from bases inside Russia. So I think there's also a question of whether we, the United States and our allies, ought to give them more help in hitting Russian bases, which heretofore we've not been willing to do. I think if the attacks are coming directly from over the line in Russia, that those bases ought to be fair game, whether they are where missiles are being launched from or where they are where troops are being supplied from. I think it's time for that because Russia has obviously escalated this war, including, as you said at the beginning, attacking Russia's second city, Kharkiv, which is not on the front lines, and trying to decimate it without ever having to put a boot on the ground. So I think it is time to give the Ukrainians more help hitting these bases inside Russia.
McGregor says she's nothing but a committed ideologue and not even worth listening to or responding to. I think he wasn't crazy that I played the clip for him.
Well, Judge, you not only have Nuland, you have Cameron, foreign minister in Britain, you have Macron in France, you have Lindsey Graham, but then you also have Mike Johnson, for God's sake, okay? Speaker of the House. All of them are delusional. Let's give them a favorable appraisal here. They don't know what's going on, okay? And that's why it's so important to have this kind of forum to discuss these things. Larry and I were on another forum the Schiller Institute ran this morning with Graham Fuller, another alumnus of the agency. We're explaining what's really going on. And what's really going on is completely different from what Americans believe and what our leaders believe. I'll just say one more thing, that about a year ago, there was a Bundestag member. She was for the Linke Party. Now she's with Sarah Wagenknecht, who started a new party. And she said this, look, unsere erste Pflicht, our first duty, ist bei dieser Königreich von Lügen, by this Königreich, by this kingdom of lies, sich nicht dumm machen zu lassen, okay? Don't let ourselves be made dumb by this Königreich of lies. Now, that's where it is. We've been made dumb by this kingdom of lies. And I dare say the people in Congress, including Mike Johnson from, where is he, from Louisiana, is not really well kept on this. He listens to people like Michael McFaul, who themselves are deranged, okay? And so that's why there's a premium on putting the word out. And I think that there are signs that this is catching on a little bit. Witness what happened in Germany. Who would have expected that Olaf Scholz's spokesperson would say, yeah, if Netanyahu comes here, we're going to arrest him. And who would have expected that those brave students on our campuses would have been able to make a dent in U.S. policy to the point where Biden said, well, okay, there's one shipment of 2,000 pounds. We won't send that. Well, that's not much, but that's something. There are dents being made, and the only way they can be made powerfully is by spreading good information around. So I feel very welcome to be on your show.
Oh, well, I feel very welcome to have the two of you on. You both know that we've all been friends for a long time. Larry, you are not only a student of the intelligence community, but of the military. Does desperation lead to escalation? I'm following up on what Mrs. Nuland, she wants the Ukrainians to hit civilian targets in Russia. Exactly what you said, like punching and not hitting your opponent.
Yeah, let's first correct for Miss Nuland's knowledge. Kharkiv is not a Russian city. Well, the Russians think of it as Russian, but it's actually in Ukraine. So she misspoke.
We have debated that. I don't know if she made a slip of the tongue or she doesn't know what the hell she's talking about.
Yeah,
she fermented two revolutions there. You'd think she'd know the geography.
Yeah.
It's Russian speaking.
Yeah, she's got Russian on the mind. Let's put it that way. So yeah, what's happening now is the increased desperation, because the United States Biden administration has crossed every red line they put down. They weren't going to send Abrams, they sent Abrams. They weren't going to send ATACMS, they sent ATACMS. They weren't going to send HIMARS, they sent HIMARS. So they're going to send F-16s, and that's going to really
American pilots.
They'll probably have to be contract pilots. Yeah, I doubt it. The Ukrainians, and But if they want to get them into theater quicker, get her there while Ukraine still exists, they're going to have to use contract pilots. But then Russia is going to view that as a nuclear threat. They've made it very clear that those are jets capable of carrying a nuclear device that can hit Russia. So Russia's not going to play around with that. But the Biden administration is not, they are not thinking this through strategically. They're not thinking this through like a three-dimensional chess and trying to have 5 or 6 moves planned out ahead. They're just total reactive mode. They're concerned with the here and now without any concern about what this means for tomorrow. Does this close them in, or does this leave other options? So yeah, they're going to escalate, and I fully anticipate that they will give Ukraine those missiles. The problem is Ukraine's not hitting military bases or military targets; they're hitting civilian targets.
Chris, go ahead and put up that B-roll that you have from Patrick Lancaster. Patrick Lancaster is the there you said that is a Russian apartment building in Russia destroyed on May 5th using Western weaponry. He is certain, Patrick Lancaster, it was Western. He's not certain it's American, to be fair to him. But that's got to be an example of just of the futility of what you're warning against, Larry.
Right.
Punching wildly and not hitting the opponent. Yeah. Why would they want to kill Russian civilians unless they're madmen at the end of their rope, Larry, the Ukrainian military?
Yeah, no, it's just to inflict harm on the Russians. But they don't understand what this does is it hardens the Russian resolve to retaliate. And it increases the commitment of the Russian people to prosecute this war to its end, that they're going to end these people. They're not going to negotiate with them. They're not going to compromise with them. They're going to finish them off. And that's what, whether the Ukrainians intended that as the outcome, that's the outcome.
Ray, last question. Do you think the West understands that Putin is not bluffing?
Well, that's what bothers me, Judge. Yeah. I've been watching Soviet leaders for half a century. I hate to be surprised, but I was surprised when Putin marched into Ukraine. I didn't think China would support him on that. China did, okay? The next big surprise I had was when Russia had advertised the fact that they are doing military exercises with tactical nuclear weapons. That is unprecedented. That happened a month ago before Putin went to visit Xi in Beijing. The third surprise I have is that Xi and the rest of the Chinese government didn't say a word about that. I think past president would indicate that the Chinese don't like this kind of thing, okay? They don't like brandishing nuclear weapons, whether they're tactical or strategic. Instead, Xi has surrounded Taiwan now with exercises and has driven U.S. frigates off claimed territorial islands there in the South China Sea. So what I'm saying here is that I don't like to be surprised. And I was surprised very much by these exercises of tactical nuclear weapons. They're going on now, if memory serves. So what's the next surprise McGovern's in for? Well, I don't know, but it scares me that I've been wrong 2 times in a row. And clearly, the U.S. is not taking this aboard. And so what's next? Provocations? The other thing is that I still think Putin is circumspect enough not to be provoked by the killing of this or the shooting of this apartment building or another. That's part of the effort, of course, from Nuland and the rest of them. So we just have to watch this really closely, especially in a election year. I don't think that Putin's going to give Biden a whole until November without inflicting a definitive defeat on him in Ukraine, and that's big because what will Biden do? He'll go to his Nulands and his Lincolns and his Sullivans, and they'll say, well, we can do a tactical nuclear thing. We'll blame it on the Russians. They were already predicted they're going to use it, so let's do that. That'll show the Russians we mean business, and we won't lose the war, and we won't lose the election first and foremost, and we won't lose our freedom if that other fellow comes in and uses the evidence that everyone knows already exists to put us in jail.
Larry, I know I said my question to Ray was the last question, but how, well, let me restate this. Have tactical nuclear weapons been used in wartime yet?
No.
So
And-
what Putin is doing is not only terrifying, it's novel.
Right, but let's also put it in perspective.
Go ahead.
When Putin announced that exercise had already been planned. The planning for it started 12 to 18 months before. The same thing with the Chinese exercise that's underway. Now, these are not what we'd call annual scheduled exercises necessarily, but they are exercises that are, if you will, in the can, that when they say, okay, we're going to do this, what are we exercising? So what they're exercising here is the ability if the Kremlin, if Putin issues an order to activate and deploy these units, can they get the message and can they deploy? And how fast do they deploy? And so it works on that entire communications from the chain of command, from top to bottom, and then the communications back from bottom to top in terms of ensure that they've got the communications protocols in place to activate and launch, give commands to launch or commands to not launch. So that's the purpose of these exercises, to ensure that they know how to both deploy and give command and control to those units when they're in the field in the event of a real world event.
Well, that's
ahead,
clear. That's the purpose of those exercises, Larry. The purpose of announcing those exercises.
Oh yeah.
That's what's unprecedented.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree.
That's why that changes the whole calculation. This is the first time he's ever.
Blinken, Sullivan, and Biden get this, Ray and Larry.
There's no indication they do, and that's what's so troubling. There's no indication that they do. They have 10 ears, and they think that they're exceptional, and the Russians would never ever try that.
Yeah.
So worse still, they may try it themselves and blame a Russian initiative as a false flag. Now that Russia is on the record as saying, look, we have these things, we're exercising. It's really a very tentative time now, a very dangerous time between now and the election, and that's why I take delight in kind of rehearsing this with you and with Larry and others and trying to figure out what it all means.
Yeah, Judge, if they got the message, there would have been a run on buying new underwear because they would have needed a change.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you for the week. Thank you for the day. You are both veterans. You probably remember people who have died that you worked and fought with in useless wars. Murray Rothbard, whom I admire, used to say the last moral war America fought was Larry's ancestors, the American Revolution. But gentlemen, we won't go there. Thank you very much for your time. God bless you. Have a great weekend. We're dark on Monday, but I believe you're both with us on Tuesday as if it were a Monday.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, Judge.
Thank you. All the best.
Bye.
A blessed Memorial Day weekend to all of you, whether you're in the U.S. Or elsewhere. We take time to remember our war dead, nearly all of whom died in vain. Maybe in a peaceful world that won't happen again. Maybe I'm being naive. We'll see you next week. We have all of your regulars, 4-day week for us because we're dark in the U.S. on Monday. But we have all of your regulars coming up in those 4 days. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.